Hi there, this is my video on making a KX500 two-stroke motor cafe racer. I've always loved two-strokes, especially 500, so I just got the idea. I wanted to put it in a street bike, and I found a 1989 Kawasaki EX500 on Craigslist for $230 with the blown-up motor. And I figured it would be a good frame for it. And I found a 2007 KX500. Took the motor out of it. You can see I weighed the difference between the motor. And there's a pretty massive size difference between the motors. The EX500 motor is almost 120 pounds, and the KX500 motor is just a little over 60. So it's about half the weight of the stock motor. The first thing I did was I made a jig to be able to keep find out where the countershaft sprocket of the stock motor is in relationship to the frame. So I made this jig so it would matched up to the stock motor location. Then I put the KX500 motor in there. The only problem was that it actually hit the frame and I couldn't bolt it on, so I had to move it forward about 10 millimeters to get frame clearance. And then I decided one difference that you have in an EX500 compared to a KX500 is the swing arm bolt doesn't go through the motor on an EX500. So I made C-channel motor mounts for the back, hoping that that will keep it from flexing because they're a fairly long motor mount, and I don't want them to flex. So I got those done, and then I made the lower mounts, just basically just welding tabs onto the frame, and then making aluminum spacers because the EX500 frame is so much wider than a KX500 frame. It's a long ways from the motor, so I had to make spacers there. Then on the front motor mount, it was a really long ways from the motor. And what I came up with was to put a crossbar across the frame, make a mount to connect it to that, and then use the head stay from the KX500, the aluminum stamped pieces for the head stay to hook it onto that. And then actually on the head stay, I put another crossbar member in mounts, and then I actually used the lower motor mount from a KX500 for the head stay. So those are all buttoned up now. And then the one thing that I've seen be an issue for some people trying to do this conversion and some that failed was the Kickstarter. And it just turned out, it was more luck than anything, that by locating the engine there, that it had perfect clearance for the Kickstarter. I didn't have to modify it at all. The only difference is the foot peg's higher, so I won't be able to kick it quite as far, but it should be fine. So that worked out really well. The next thing I had to do was figure out how to do the shift linkage because the motor is in a completely different, I mean, the shifter's way different than the stock location. And what I ended up doing, this is the stock KX500 shifter, and I cut it in half, took a section out, turned it around backwards, which makes it like a U, so there's room for the sprocket and chain to go through. But then I can also get some height to get some leverage on it because where the shifter comes out of the motor and where the end of the shift lever is are almost identical. So trying to get leverage on it was kind of a pain, and I had to increase the height of the pivot point. All the pivot and the rod and everything that adjusts it is off the EX500. Then the next issue was the pipe. I just took a shot at remaking the stock pipe. So it's basically the stock pipe turned upside down. It's 180. It's upside down and backwards the way it comes out of the KX500, and I had to cut it off and turn it 180 degrees. You can see in the picture that one of the seams is turned, so I had to turn it to get clearance around the frame. And then once I had that, then the exhaust was actually pointed directly into the cylinder, so I had to cut out like a triangle shaped piece of metal and bend it up and weld a cuff over it. And then I had to do the same thing again higher up to get the angle so it would go over the top of the motor and not hit the motor and have room. That seemed to work out pretty well. I mean, it was hard to weld. It's easy to burn a hole in it, but it turned out pretty well. I think it has good space. It's different because it's inside the frame rails, but there's a ton of room in there since the engine is so much smaller. I just need to make up some mounts, and then I'm going to have to bend the Stinger underneath the frame and then up so I can put a silencer on it. But I think it's pretty good at this point. I just need to get some motivation to get back out in the garage and get to work. So I will make another video when I get some more stuff done. Thanks for listening or watching, I guess.